You might think you know what makes someone strong, mentally unshakable, unstoppable. You see them handle stress calmly, bounce back from setbacks, and make tough decisions without hesitation. You admire them. You wonder how they do it. But here's the truth most people will never tell you. The habits that truly shape mental strength aren't glamorous. They're invisible. They're quiet. They don't make headlines. They don't look like courage in action or dramatic moments of triumph. Yet they define everything about resilience, emotional control, and long-term success. What if I told you that mentally strong people do things every day that most of us avoid, deny, or even hide? Things they'd never admit, even to themselves. Things that are quietly building their inner power while the rest of the world chases shortcuts, comfort, or approval. Today, we'll uncover these hidden truths. We'll look at the traits and habits of mentally strong people, those behaviors that keep them grounded, focused, and unshakable. These aren't theories. They're backed by psychology, brain science, and decades of observation. By the end, you'll not only recognize these habits in others, you may start to see them in yourself. And more importantly, you'll understand how to start cultivating them without faking it or forcing it. Let's begin. The first sign of mental strength is something you'll rarely hear anyone talk about. They embrace discomfort deliberately. Most people run from discomfort. They avoid pain, ignore hard truths, and chase comfort at every turn. Mentally strong people do the opposite. They choose situations that challenge them, that push their limits, that make them uncomfortable. Why? Because the brain is like a muscle. It grows stronger when you expose it to controlled stress. Research from the field of cognitive psychology shows that exposure to manageable stressors improves emotional regulation and problem solving. This is called stress inoculation. Soldiers, athletes, and high performers undergo rigorous training not to punish themselves, but to train the mind to stay calm under pressure. Imagine a person who avoids confrontation at work. They fear the awkwardness, the argument, the potential fallout. A mentally strong person will face it. They prepare, they endure, they engage. Not because they enjoy conflict, but because they know avoiding it erodes control and confidence. They face discomfort silently, often without anyone noticing. The second trait is their willingness to admit when they're wrong. Mentally strong people don't publicly broadcast their mistakes. They don't wear humility as a badge. They confront errors privately, analyze them, and adjust. This is crucial because denial is a cognitive trap. Our brains are wired for self-preservation, which often translates into defending our ego rather than learning from failure. Developmental psychologists call this ego resilience, the capacity to handle setbacks without defensiveness. People with high ego resilience can say, "I messed up," without collapsing or lashing out. Picture a manager who gave the wrong instructions. Most would cover up the error, blame circumstances, or shift responsibility. A mentally strong person quietly recalibrates, communicates corrections, and moves on. They never announce, "I'm strong because I own my mistakes." That would defeat the purpose. The third insight is that they control their inner dialogue. Everyone has a running narrative in their head. Some people let it run wild: self-doubt, panic, anger, resentment. Mentally strong people monitor it closely. They replace destructive thoughts with constructive ones, often without anyone noticing. Cognitive behavioral therapy highlights this. Your thoughts directly influence emotions, decisions, and behavior. People who practice cognitive restructuring, even informally, reduce stress and make better choices. For example, if you fail a project, your mind might scream, "I'm incompetent." A mentally strong person hears the thought, pauses, and reframes it. "This didn't go as planned. I can learn and improve." They don't brag about this mental discipline. It's internal, quiet, and consistent. The fourth habit is the ability to say no, even when it hurts. Mentally strong people prioritize long-term gains over short-term approval. They understand that every yes has a cost: time, energy, focus. Saying no protects their mental bandwidth. Studies in social psychology show that overcommitting leads to stress, burnout, and decision fatigue. Avoiding this requires self-awareness and courage. Think about your own life. How often have you said yes to avoid disappointing someone, even when it drained you? Mentally strong people set boundaries silently, without explaining themselves endlessly. They understand that protecting themselves is not selfish, it's strategic. The fifth sign is their tolerance for solitude. Being alone is uncomfortable for most people. Social creatures crave connection, approval, validation. Mentally strong individuals, however, can sit with themselves without panic. They process thoughts, reflect on decisions, and recharge internally. Research in positive psychology shows solitude fosters creativity, emotional insight, and problem-solving. Being comfortable alone strengthens self-identity and reduces dependence on external validation. Imagine someone who spends evenings reflecting quietly instead of scrolling social media. They are building resilience, processing emotions, and strengthening clarity. This habit is invisible to the world, but it underpins mental strength. The sixth habit is their resistance to instant gratification. Mentally strong people delay rewards. They don't seek immediate pleasure at the cost of long-term goals. Neuroscience calls this executive function the prefrontal cortex, controlling impulse and planning. High-functioning executive control correlates strongly with life success. Consider an individual training for a marathon. Every pizza, every night of skipping practice is a temptation. They resist. No one sees the daily sacrifices, the early mornings, the soreness, the repetitive routine. That quiet discipline compounds over time into physical and mental endurance. The seventh trait is emotional regulation under pressure. We all feel anger, fear, frustration. Most people act impulsively. Mentally strong people experience these emotions fully but do not let them dictate actions. They pause, assess, and respond strategically. Psychologists call this affect regulation. Studies show that controlled emotional response predicts better social relationships, decision-making, and stress management. Picture a heated conversation. Most would react immediately, escalating conflict. A mentally strong person listens, identifies emotions, and responds with intention. They never advertise their composure. It happens naturally, consistently, invisibly. The eighth insight is the selective sharing of their struggles. Mentally strong individuals often carry burdens privately. They do not broadcast every challenge. They understand that airing every difficulty does not foster strength, it cultivates dependence and distraction. Sociologists observe that people who overshare often seek validation, which can undermine resilience. By keeping struggles private, mentally strong people protect their energy and maintain focus. Think about someone juggling multiple projects and personal hardships. They manage stress, process emotions, and solve problems internally. They share selectively, strategically, and only when it adds value. The world perceives calm, not chaos. The ninth habit is learning from failure without self-pity. Mentally strong people fail, but they do not dwell on it. They analyze the misstep, extract lessons, and adjust strategy. The psychological principle here is growth mindset, coined by Carol Dweck. Individuals with a growth mindset view failure as feedback, not judgment. For instance, an entrepreneur who loses a client does not spiral into self-blame. They dissect what went wrong, adapt their approach, and move forward. There is no announcement of resilience, no Instagram post about bouncing back. They simply adapt quietly and effectively. The 10th and final trait is maintaining perspective on what they can control. Mentally strong individuals understand the distinction between what they can change and what they cannot. They expend energy only on controllable factors and let go of the rest. This principle, rooted in Stoic philosophy and validated by psychological research on locus of control, reduces stress, improves focus, and prevents burnout. Consider someone dealing with workplace politics. Instead of obsessing over colleagues' opinions, they focus on performance, preparation, and attitude. They accept that influence is limited, but control is absolute within their own actions. When we step back and look at these 10 traits together, a pattern emerges. Mental strength is not about dramatic gestures, heroic courage, or visible toughness. It is about quiet, invisible habits. It is choosing discomfort over avoidance, admitting mistakes without ego, controlling thought patterns, saying no without guilt, being comfortable alone, delaying gratification, regulating emotion, sharing selectively, learning without self-pity, focusing on what is controllable. These behaviors are subtle. They are deliberate. They are cumulative. They rarely make the highlight reel, but they shape the outcomes of life far more than talent, luck, or charisma. The most important lesson? You do not need to broadcast your mental strength. You do not need validation, applause, or recognition. It is built in silence, through repeated conscious choices. Every difficult conversation you face, every uncomfortable decision you endure, every internal dialogue you master, strengthens your inner foundation. Look at your life honestly. Which of these habits do you already practice? Which ones challenge you the most? Strength is not born overnight. It is forged quietly, invisibly, in the moments no one sees. If you want to cultivate real resilience, start small. Face one uncomfortable truth today. Say no to one distraction. Sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes. Reflect on a recent mistake without judgment. Notice where you let impulse rule your decisions. Adjust. Repeat. Over time, these small acts compound. You will notice your patience increasing, your clarity sharpening, your confidence solidifying. People will notice your composure, your consistency, your calm. But you will know it is the product of daily choices, not performance or pretense. Remember, mental strength is not about being unbreakable. It is about knowing how to rebuild, silently and effectively, after every fracture. It is about becoming the person who faces life fully, without denial, without theatrics, without excuses. You do not need to announce it. You do not need permission. Every act of quiet discipline, every controlled thought, every strategic pause, every private reflection builds the foundation of strength that will carry you through the storms of life. The people you admire for their resilience, their calm, their decisiveness, they are not exceptional in ways that you cannot reach. They are exceptional in the things they do consistently, privately, and without recognition. Start today. Embrace discomfort. Admit mistakes. Control your mind. Protect your energy. Learn from failure. Focus on what you can control. Over time, these invisible habits will make you unshakable. And when you look back years from now, you'll realize that real mental strength was never about what the world could see. It was about what you quietly built inside.